may get a lot of complaints if people can hear you.
Do we have budget for an audio engineer? Is that a?
So that's the test. If this works, then we can decide whether we want to really
Wait, I can do that too.
invest.
I have to spend.
All right. We're up and it looks like we might have audio. So.
Awesome.
So as trustee Hannon is ready, we will ring the bell.
I'd just like to elevate your.
Oh, the mic stand is.
No, there's not. We did, and somebody helped themselves to it, didn't they?
All right.
Yeah, there's the microphone stand that's attached to the USB mic.
You can just pin it to your shirt.
It's a dangerous spot for it.
Luckily, Ken's face is.
Oh, come on now.
All right. I'm done.
Recorder on. Okay, so we will call to order the November 14th, 2018 regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Deb Watkins is excused. All other trustees are present. Are there any changes to the agenda that anybody wants to make at the moment?
Nope.
Okay. We should have in the Dropbox minutes from our October meeting for approval.
They're close to the bottom.
Yeah, they're unnumbered, just as draft.
Oh, yep, sorry. They went in late, so.
So I move that we approve the October 11th minutes as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none, then was there comment?
Listen,
Hearing none, then all in favor of approving the draft minutes from October the 11th, 2018, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So 7:05, we are not behind. Is our first public comment period, privilege of the floor. We've allocated 15 minutes for it. So if any member of the public would like to make any comment, please feel free. Yes, Janice.
Yeah, sorry. I would like to know the difference between a private session and public meeting and executive session.
Okay, so executive session is defined by public officers law, the section commonly referred to as open meetings law. Executive session can be entered into for specific reasons only. And off the top of my head, they include personnel matters, which may lead to the employment or termination of the employment of a particular individual, certain employment background related issues, health and HIPAA related issues, those kinds of things. There's also executive session can be used to discuss litigation, ongoing or pending, and anything subject to the Taylor law, basically collective bargaining with unions. Private session with counsel is a function of attorney-client privilege. So it's not an executive session as defined by open meetings law. It's when a board seeks to discuss with counsel the counsel's legal opinion or legal guidance on a particular issue. And so based on the principles of attorney-client privilege, those sessions are not technically executive session because of those specific executive session reasons. It's purely based on the attorney-client privilege when the attorney is dispensing advice to a legislative or judicial body.
And that's not open to the public.
Not unless any one member of the board invites a member of the public to be present. Generally, it's for attorney and client only.
And then is there any update on the line?
Statistics, We have not received any statistics since August. I would expect to get some towards the end of the year. I think with the weather, we'll probably see them pull their inventory. So we'll probably see a fewer number. And I haven't reached out to or heard from Jeff Goodmark of Line Bike. So August, so we're probably end of the year, every three to 4 months, I think, would be a good time to get an update.
I only see about 10 around town now. And I know there was controversy a month ago about all of that. So nothing to report.
Nothing to report from here. I am interested to see more statistics because August included grassroots in the summer. And so I'm curious myself to see what the usage looked like after that. Yes, sir.
I know the board has been working on the HVAC changeover with heating and air conditioning. I just want to say that I'm very strongly in favor of seeing the building wean itself from fossil fuels, fresh gas, and I think the best course of action is to use air source heat pumps and build electric, which is at this point probably the only renewable fuel that would go in there. And so I just want to register feelings that I think that's the way that the village ought to approach the changeover in heating and air conditioning.
Good. Thank you.
Oh, I'm Rick Darford.
Thank you. Any other comment from anyone present? We had 15 minutes. I don't want to shortchange anyone in the public comment period. One of these nights, maybe we will test the limits of the 15 minutes. Still waiting for that to happen. Last chance. Okay. So with that, we'll move on to number 5, reports from representatives. Nancy Zahler from the town sent me an email saying that she wasn't going to be able to make it tonight. She did send an email update of various town goings on, which I'll forward to everyone when I get home. Which takes us to board member reports, starting with Fire and Comp Plan Zoning Revision Committee. Oh,
So-
actually, I'm going to press pause
Yes.
because we have. You're just in time.
Oh, I wore my camouflage hoodie.
Yeah.
Wrong one.
Well, we just got to the report from representatives portion, so if you don't mind walking in and being put on the spot, we'll put you on the spot.
Sure. So we have some amount of money to spend on the budget, and we went up by a certain percent on those numbers for just a second. Recycling, I mentioned this before, the recycling and solid waste fees for next year is gonna be up $3 from $54 to $57 to the yearly fee, And let's see what else here. Sales tax numbers for you.
Ooh.
That's up again. Right, here's the budget. I'm confused now. So now we'll go back to the budget. I got
Okay.
those numbers here. The tax levy increase is 1.54%. And the total that's going to be on a medium priced home of $185,000, is the medium priced home. So the amount that's going to go up per year is $14.63. And we were able to keep it pretty low because the sales tax has been good and a little bit of revenue from some casinos. Not that I'm advocating going and spending all the money there, but we get some of that back. The sales tax is So I have, I can't remember if I gave you both of these, but I have August and September. So why don't we just go with September, because that'll give you the year to date. September for the county was up from last year, 7.05%. And local municipalities was up 9.78% from last year in September. And so for the county, that's a total year-to-date of 6.96%, and municipalities of 8.39%. So that helps with everybody's budgeting. So, especially since it was just Veterans Day, one of the things on the budget that we added, if I hadn't mentioned this was before, was adding somebody, a full-time person, to work with veterans issues, and we hadn't had anybody in several years to do that, so we're gonna add a full-time person to help with benefits or housing or whatever people need. And we've been hearing that that's quite a big need in this area. There's quite a few veterans, especially since the closest VA, I think, is in Bath. So having nothing here, so some of that might be, of course, helping with transportation and trying to get there. The airport updates. The geothermal portion is done, so we'll have, the airport will have geothermal heating and air conditioning. And so getting it almost entirely off of natural gas. We are still missing about $11 million to complete the airport, but we have another application in to the federal government for some of that money. NYSEG was supposed to, or was saying they were going to give some money because the pipeline in Brighton wasn't completed, and so they were saying, well, if people don't want the pipeline, we'll take that $8 million to do some other things to help people get off of natural gas, and they're supposed to share like that money, but, and we had put in, I think, $4 million for a grant out of their $8 million, and they have so far offered us about $4,000. So it's not quite what we were thinking. And, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. The Department of Transportation, and pardon me if I don't remember exactly, because I go to this meeting in Ulysses and Enfield, and tonight I'm going to do different meetings, so if I'm repeating some of this stuff, I apologize. So we sold some of the county land that was up by the airport for the DOT, for the state DOT to go up there, and that's gone through. I'm not sure what stage they're in, but I'll let you know when we find out more about like when they're actually moving up there. And some other things in the pipeline, these things, there's two things or three things. They haven't passed the legislature yet, but a couple of big things that are in, that have passed committees or are going through committees. One is we passed a resolution in our environmental committee urging the state not to repower the Cayuga power plant with natural gas, asking them to let them do, they do have plans to do renewable energy on site, such as solar, so we're asking the state to okay that, but not to repower because that's against the county and the state's carbon reduction goals. So that, we'll see if that gets passed by the full legislature on the 20th. One committee, but just want to give you a heads up on that. The health committee passed a resolution supporting the state proposed law legalizing recreational marijuana. And a lot of people have asked us a lot of questions. So it would be, the law is it would be legal for people 21 on up. Because a lot of people are worried about kids, getting it. And moving through committee is a plastic bag ban, but that's going pretty slow. We're gonna make sure we work with, the stores and the restaurants and things like that before that goes into effect. So, but the basics of it, we're thinking right now is to ban single-use plastic bags. And if they want to give paper bags, then there would be a charge, maybe between 5 and 20 cents. And, we're not sure if we're gonna have that be that the store decides that, or the county decides that. We're still trying to figure out all that. And again, we want to talk to the store, more of the stores, before we just decide that for them. And we're gonna be putting out, well, one of the committees is putting out a booklet for boaters, which will affect this area since we get some tourism in this area. And that's going to be talking to them about different ways to, for instance, to clean their boats, so we're not transmitting different bacteria or plants from one invasive species from one place to another. But it's going to be something that's going to also tell them be touristy, so hopefully they'll keep it. And it'll be telling them, oh, well, you can go dock your boat here to go for dinner, and you can go get gas here, and different things like that you can do on the lakes. I think that's mostly it.
Any comments or questions for Ann? All right, thanks, Ann. Back to Ben on fire comp plan zoning revision committee.
Yeah, so for the comp plan zoning revision committee, we met last week. We had a long conversation about the two proposals that we received for our request for proposal. There was general interest in kind of looking deeper at ADR and seeing what the next step would be to maybe have a chat with them, video conference, something like that. So we're kind of discussing, figuring out what that next step looks like. We also spent a little bit of time high level reviewing the current comp plan and areas that the group felt might warrant further looks or additions, fleshing out, or topics that maybe were overlooked completely and that we'd like to kind of add in. So starting on that conversation to help guide our conversation with EDR.
Good.
As for fire, there are two items there that I think need motions for both. The first is Alex Grezoff, the chief has recommended her to become a driver, be listed as a driver. I can give you her spelling because yeah, I'll get it to you. But so I think just that's kind of straightforward in my mind. So I'll make a motion to list Alex Grezoff as a driver. I'm not sure what the right terminology is there on the chief's recommendation.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is that fire apparatus only?
To my knowledge, it wasn't very specific. I can look at what are there
Most likely it would be.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else there is.
What's the distinction?
As opposed to ambulance.
Oh,
Yeah, just said, please add Alex Grezoff as a driver. So it wasn't specific. We'll say what apparatus. If we need to go around again, we can do that.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
She's not volunteering on the other side of the house.
Okay.
so I think we're good.
Any comments, questions, discussion? All in favor of approving Alex Grezoff to be an apparatus driver for the Trumansburg Fire Department, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
The other point of business is the Tahoe is being listed for auction. And I believe we have to have a motion to have no further use. Is that right or no?
We
We
did
did
that.
that.
We did that already.
Yeah, we did it in October,
Excellent.
effective October 31st.
Easy peasy. That is it for fire and comp plan zone revision.
Any questions for Ben? Okay, then we'll move on to EMS and youth. Ben Carver.
one thing, I went to a comptroller does free budget trainings. I used one of the nice sunny days that we've had in the last 2 months to sit in a room and talk about budgeting. So if anyone wants to talk about that, it was fairly overview type stuff. I gave Ben the slides from it that are good bullet points, but nothing shocking there. As far as EMS goes, Jordan and I talked with Brian Snyder. We'll obviously discuss that sort of more in executive session. So summer recreation this year, and Vicky, are we missing any bills from that October? Are we pretty much caught up?
No, we're still missing the bus bill, which
That
is
is exactly what I was afraid you would say.
about between $4,500 and $5,000.
That changes things substantially. So we'll have to look at summer recreation a little bit closer. I think that brings us close to 9,000 under for the year, somewhere in that ballpark, which is this year, things, obviously the minimum wage is going up, which is part of what's driving this, but I don't know, we'll have to take a closer look. In any case, we will meet with the town, or I will, Vicky and I will fairly soon. I don't know
December.
exactly when that's coming up, but
I'd like to get October closed.
but so fairly soon, and we have a reserve account that Gordon hates that we'll discuss whether or not to take money out of that reserve in order to basically foot that bill, or if we will split it and basically we end up billing the town for half of that loss.
I think that's the split.
Right. But we can do either so that we can take it from the reserve or we can bill it.
No, because that reserve is, well, that's the way I understood, but we'll have to look at that.
That's how we've historically done it, but we can address that in the meantime too. The pasta party that I talked about in our last meeting was great. Anne was there. It was marvelous. We danced. My boy danced. It was pretty great. I had a fun time. I met with the 4 boards group, which is the T-Burg Community reps from the school, town, and us, which was fairly productive. Nothing really like to do came out of that. The one thing is Tara asked that everyone go to tburgcr.org and sign up for the newsletter, which is, I think, a really good, they're just sending out, it's not onerous. It's not going to clog your inbox or anything. I mean, it's just once a month. It's, you're on that list, right? It's fairly straightforward. Momentum going for that group that I think is really great.
It's not spammy. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good pace.
Yeah.
Good email.
Good events in the community once a month.
Right.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And so hopefully, now that we have this sort of 4 boards MOU passed and cemented, hopefully that's sort of a step on their ladder to get grant funding down the road. So we'll see how it goes. The other piece that I had was the street tree committee, but that is, I see later on the agenda. So I'll just wait. And that's all.
Okay, any questions for Ben? Deb Watkins is excused. She did send me items on the agenda as we get there. The only specific DPW thing she mentioned is that MRB is continuing their I&I study, and she has some follow-up to do with them about what they were able to do, if anything, in October. And so stay tuned on that piece. Next is police TCOG and TACC. Mr. Hannon.
Police report for the month of October, 172 calls for service. Breaking that down, it comes down to about 8, 10, 16 criminal investigation and 74 are trying to maybe build out a very high level report sticks. And I think the way Chief is now breaking them down makes that very easy. So I'm going to take this sheet and try to put it into a graph form. I don't know if there's any preference over pie or otherwise. If anyone has a graph preference, but or just break them down and list them out. But it just seems to be percent by category might be the best way to do it without getting too in the weeds on some of this stuff. Chief has put forward, Chief and Sergeant Peters met and they've put forward their 2 kind of nominees for the full-time positions. I added those to the Dropbox ahead of time, about 5 minutes ago. So we can look at those, and I'm guessing we probably don't want to vote on that tonight, but we can maybe review the candidates in executive session perhaps. I don't know, Roran, if you have any.
So we should
Feeling on that.
discuss the specifics of the candidates in executive session. Unless there's specific objection from the board, we can hire them tonight afterward, or we can hire them in December, depending on what's going to be easiest for chief in scheduling for January.
Yeah, it sounded like December wouldn't be a big problem for him, so I'm not really interested in rushing it if people want to take their time with it and look at the candidates. But they are two people that have been here a while and should be pretty familiar. And I think they're both live locally too. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything else regarding chief. Police will be staffing Winterfest, December 1st, 4 to 7. That'll be fun. I did want to mention, give some recognition to one of our officers, maybe our most recent hire, actually, Jason Marzan, received some high praise from the school district. He responded to a call on a welfare check of, there was a child, I guess, locked out of the child's home out in the cold rain, and he responded and then did a lot of follow-up with the school district and social services, or I'm sorry, yeah, DSS, to just follow up and make sure everything was good there. So the school district was very appreciative of him going above and beyond. So I just thought it'd be nice to mention that. And I think that's about it with regards to police. Chief said, and we don't have to talk about this tonight, but something to put on our radar is a possible vehicle replacement. The Crown Victoria, which went into service in April of 2011, is nearing kind of the end of its road. And it looks like we've found a potential truck that comes pre-equipped, so wouldn't have to buy equipment to equip the vehicle with. So something to think about in the near future. Trumansburg Chamber, as I mentioned, Winterfest on December 1st, 4 to 7. That will be fun. We did have the ribbon cutting for Homespun. I think that happened since our last meeting. I'll talk a little bit more about them when we get to the smoking discussion. And they had some other feedback on some of the other things we'll be discussing. I did run by them, and this is also on my part of the agenda. So with regards to the safe spot, we've kind of been stuck in this area where it's been hard to get kind of professional opinion on the how best to guide our participants in terms of what should they do when someone comes in looking to utilize a safe spot. I've had many different conversations kind of with different agencies, and every time I kind of put the ball in their court, nothing happens. So I took all those conversations and kind of composed my own list of what should be done based on all those conversations. And a couple of days ago, I sent that back out to those various individuals, thinking it's probably easier for them to correct something than to create something from scratch for us. So I feel pretty good about that. And so the chamber's going to look that over. The school district's going to look that over, as are some others. So I'm hoping that gets turned around quick enough where we get this thing going before the end of the calendar year. I think that's about it for chamber stuff. And then TCOG, there's no meeting this month because they kind of combine the November, December meetings. And actually, I was, for the first time, unable to go, but Tammy went in my stead, my proxy. Is there anything? All I know is there was a survey sent out by the county administrator asking us to respond to the training academy, something we talked about before. So I know you had some opinions on that.
Yeah, and I responded to this.
Okay. I'm glad you were willing to share your opinion. That's good.
Of course I was.
Is there anything else you want to highlight from that meeting?
No, sir.
Okay.
I was a little lost because they were picking up on topics that hadn't been there previously, so.
Yeah. I will say one thing that just keeps getting discussed in different reports are created, they're working with Cornell a lot on this, is continuing to look at EMS. So the idea of potentially central EMS, and basically every municipality, struggles to pay for this. This is an expensive thing. And so how can we put our heads together to help each other out in the EMS world? I will say, I've talked to a number of people that are on TCOG and have been for a while. There's an opinion that it hasn't been productive for quite some time. So I'm meeting actually tomorrow with the former county administrator. And then I'm going to have another meeting with Don Barber, who was pretty instrumental in the healthcare consortium getting TCOG going. They both told me they have ideas for maybe how we can turn that around, because there's a lot of smart people in the room, most of which I think aren't showing up because they've kind of given up on it. So we're going to see if we can do something about that. I think that's it. Was there anything I missed on my portion here? I don't think so. Any questions?
Any questions for Keith? All right. Treasurer.
Safe spot.
Yeah, so regarding, I just kind of glazed over it a little, breezed through it a little bit. I compiled the list of really what we're waiting on is just the participants to get what they do if somebody comes in. And I've been really trying to make sure that that's signed off on by healthcare professionals and mental health professionals and, child services type professionals. And so no one's really been forthcoming with a list for me. So I sent a list to them, and I'm going to let them take the red pen, do it.
Right. No one wants to, jump on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone say, "Oh, great idea. We'll get back to you." And that still waiting 2 months later. So that's where we're at. But hopefully within the next couple weeks, I think.
Treasurer, Ricky.
I have a few things, another few things for the board to do. Our external auditors finished up in about 3.5 days. It went really, really smoothly. We've all learned over the years what they want, so they had it when they walked in the door. So that went really well. I am going to training tomorrow for budgeting some stuff, just, to learn more. Other than that, just daily things that go on. And I don't know if you want to do it this month or next month. It's either, I'm not sending the contracts out until December. A resolution from the board to give Roden permission to sign the contracts when they do come back in early January. So we do it next month. You want to do it next month? Okay, so we'll do this in December.
Are those contracts in Dropbox, or I feel like it's
no,
yeah, okay.
no, but I can put them in there if you want to review.
It'd be nice
them.
just to look through.
Absolutely, sure. I generally sign them, and they make payment. They have to make payment by February 15th after their taxes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, yep, sure, I'll do that for the next meeting. The internal communication letter is just the form letter that we always do with our auditors, just saying they're going to do our audit. And there is a resolution in the Dropbox for the DPW. They are going to purchase a new truck. It's an F-250 2019. They would like to have the resolution for the truck up to $36,000 from the DPW equipment reserve.
Did Deb write the resolution, or did she give you that? Because there's
No.
there's a quote for the truck in there.
Right.
It's substantially less than.
But then there's equipment that has to be put
That's all
on it.
that
And
is.
yes,
Okay.
and they're purchasing a plow for it too,
Oh, okay.
which all
That-
comes out of
That
that, yeah.
doesn't,
No, I did discuss it with Debbie and I discussed it with Dusty too. So
And that's subject to permissive referendum?
it is.
Is it important at all to put in something like purchase and equip the pickup truck?
I can do that.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Absolutely, before I send it to Tammy to put out.
Okay, with that edit, would someone like to make a motion to issue this permissive referendum?
yeah, I move that we appropriate $36,000 from the DPW Equipment Reserve Fund, or up to $36,000 to be used to purchase and equip a 2019 F-250. Subject to permissive referendum.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
I,
All right.
Any opposed, any abstentions?
The second thing or third thing that I have is our biannual, every 2 years, is that how you say it, biannual? Contract with Municipal Solutions to represent us. In our financials, there's a report that has to be done every year. It's called EMMA. It is very, very, very involved. I tried it my first year, but they do it and they charge us very little to do it. But this is to just do all of our financial things that they do for us. But this is the contract for it.
Any change in price from last?
Nope. Mm-mm.
What is that amount?
They don't list the total amount because it depends on what they do for us.
So that's just an authorized burn to sign situation.
Mhm.
Just take a quick look.
Sure.
I looked it over. So that report is $200 to do that? That's crazy.
Mhm. Oh, and you should see the report. It is. Yeah. I mean, maybe I could do it now, but that first year I thought, whoa.
That's what I
So
think
this is
every
just for
time.
the Emma filing?
No, it's for all of our, I believe it's for all of
So
the
it's
way I
just,
read
it's
it.
really
Right.
just an engagement letter.
Right. Mhm.
So I move that we authorize Jordan to sign that contract as presented with Municipal Solutions.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Okay, and the next thing is, supplemental agreement from Fisher regarding the additional construction and inspections. We got this email like October 3rd. I don't know if I've read it. To me, it just is a repetitive of what they did. I didn't, have you looked at it?
I haven't had a chance to ask them for some clarification.
Okay, do you want to wait till
Yeah,
this till
let's
December?
Table that to December.
Okay, no problem.
I looked at it quick and it looked like a reiteration of the initial agreement. Like it was
right.
very,
That's kind of what I thought too.
Might be
like
part
I thought it was the first agreement.
Probably
First,
part of the closeout.
Because we are making the final payment to them. Okay, so that's done.
So if you would follow up with them Friday or Monday
Oh.
and ask them for more specifics on that piece.
Okay, exactly what they're, okay. Yep. The last thing I have, we need to hire a cleaning service. Tony was doing it and now he's with going to EMS more and more. So there are 2 quotes in the mail, in the Dropbox. I have tried repetitively to get companies, anybody that I could find Google. I contacted like local people that the town of Ulysses uses and the bank uses because people have to be insured to do ours. It tends to be a little harder to find them. I did find these 2.
You made it.
I know.
Well, hello there.
That's dedication words.
Yeah, it's gonna snow in New York, I got the hell out.
Welcome
They
home.
deal with it so
We're
well.
happy to see you.
Welcome back.
I do not believe that we're gonna find anybody less expensive. But I can absolutely keep trying if you want me to,
How often, oh, this is weekly.
weekly. And I think that's a deterrent for a lot of these companies too, because we are only weekly. And both people are local. The one.
The rates they're saying here aren't weekly though.
No, they're monthly.
Okay.
Yeah, they're monthly. The Melics do the bank, they're local, they live here in Shermansburg, in the town. The Grants live in Lodi, I believe. And he is the new executive chef at Domino's, the winery.
Wait, the Grant?
I think that, yeah,
Griffith?
Griffith, sorry, Griffith.
Okay, I was gonna say, I missed one.
Sorry, nope. There was another lady.
Does it
that-
need to be a company versus like?
It has to be, no, it doesn't. It just has to be somebody that has the insurance. Because there were several people that contacted me, but they're not willing to get the insurance.
Do you remember what we were paying before?
3 years ago, we were paying $340 or $380 a month. I think it was $340 a month.
Inflation is a thing.
Yeah, well, they didn't really do a great job.
So let's try to get a couple more quotes.
Okay.
And unless anyone loves this number and wants to make a motion to pay it, I would suggest we try to get a couple more quotes and revisit it in December.
That sounds good.
Community clean project?
Weekly?
Volunteerism.
Yeah.
No?
What?
No cleaning?
You can't tell what I'm thinking?
Get it out.
No, I'm
Okay, I can do that. And I think that's all. I
Okay.
you know, think
Any comments or questions for Vicky?
new signs.
Stack of stuff. Clerk, Tammy.
I don't have much, floating around the table somewhere, there it is, the re-levy, unpaid property taxes, the village taxes, in the amount of $21,137.07. I would ask the board to, resolve to allow me to do this, and, also it looks like I just need 2 more signatures, which would be to my right. So if we could do that, please.
Anything else?
Didn't we already authorize the
We talked about that.
We talked about it, and then either you did it and I didn't note it,
Oh, or we just,
or we glazed over it and didn't finish, so I
well,
just
this
thought
time,
we would do it again for
all right.
doing our
I-
due diligence.
Move that we authorize Tammy to re-levy taxes to the county for, what was the number again?
$21,137.07.
For that amount.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
How much do unpaid taxes cost us every year? Anything?
No, because it gets related to the
Well,
town.
no, I mean, yeah, of course, because there's additional administrative
Right.
costs, right? I mean, my time, I guess, and
And the
postage.
treasurer time, and I mean, whoever you're filing them to the county, right? So it's county time?
No, they don't go to the county until tomorrow.
Right,
So.
they have to handle it, they have to, don't they have to?
Right, no, I'm
pay
saying,
for-
once I send it to them, that our expense is done and they make us whole. But yes, there's administrative costs, of course. There has to be.
Is that ever documented? I'm just curious. So we
No,
prepared a segue into potentially more convenient ways to pay. Is there something to compare that to? If
since when do you need to segue into anything?
All right, We have a motion and a second to
Working on my second.
re-levy unpaid village property taxes. Any additional discussion?
How is that year over year? Is it more or less?
It's about average. It's about average. There's a couple of houses that have sold that were, always on the delinquent, so maybe actually a little bit.
What was our levy this year?
I said, I think, it was 900 and change. I put 950 to figure out what it was, 2%. I'll find it for you.
I don't remember.
It was about $954. Okay, now it bothers me.
About 2%.
Yeah, that's pretty good. For 98% thing,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really good.
No, it's good, it's great. Other than that,
We should, did we vote?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, did I just black out for a second?
See, this
No,
is
I
what
think
happened
we should
last
probably
time.
vote.
Any additional discussion on re-levying the village property taxes that have not yet been paid? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And now,
Other than a lot of meeting time, I really don't have anything to add unless anyone has questions about things in the office in general.
Deputy clerk?
I think Gordon and I, are going to do a couple more interviews, hopefully this coming week. Fingers crossed. I think we have a strong candidate right now. But we also had a situation where last week we had 2 interviews scheduled. One girl became very sick and couldn't come, and the other guy just completely blew us off after confirming less than 24 hours before his appointment. So,
So that's a definite hire.
it's a
Maybe,
definite.
maybe no longer consider.
don't call no shows make for easy consideration.
They sure do. So we've done a couple of interviews and a couple more, and I would hope that by the meeting in December, which the agenda is growing right before our eyes, we'll have a recommendation to the board for maybe a January start.
Great.
Any other questions for Tammy? All right, if not, then under my report, the only item listed is, in the Dropbox, is the engagement letter from our village council. Thaler and Thaler, for 2019. Engaging the services of Guy Crow and other members of the firm as needed. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review it. Basically, everything that he's been doing, he will continue to do. And so unless there are any questions on it, or even if there are, I would entertain a motion to authorize me to sign this engagement letter for legal representation between the village and Guy Crow of Thaler and Thaler in Ithaca.
I'd like to move that we authorize Gordon to sign this agreement for legal representation with Guy Crow of Thaler and Thaler.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just out of curiosity, why is it Guy Crow with Thaler and Thaler and not just Thaler and Thaler? How does that relationship work? I mean, not that that's relevant for us, but just out of curiosity.
It has to do with their business structure.
Yeah, just the way they.
And so some firms, the structure is you engage the firm and they figure out who best suits that particular need. Other firms, you're engaging the attorney and then they have their
Umbrella or whatever.
partnership earning structure is. The attorney is creating revenue for the firm by their engagement. So,
But it doesn't actually affect how, I mean, we still are engaged with the firm as a whole.
correct. We pay the firm. The firm is the billing agent.
Right.
And it does give us access to others in the firm if for some reason Guy is unavailable or feels that his expertise is lacking.
Right.
Anything else on the engagement letter? All right,
Just a vote.
if not, then I would call for a vote on engaging Thaler and Thaler for legal representation in 2019. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? This is not on the agenda. I feel compelled to to make a comment, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it doesn't apply to anyone in the audience tonight. I had hoped that there might be some others here. We tend to not be attracting the numbers that we have had in the past. But through word of mouth and the miracle of modern technology, perhaps what I'm about to say will reach others beyond those who are here. So I want to make sure that's clear. I'm not talking to anyone currently present. On the back of our agenda, it clearly states that during public comment period, certain decorum, what we would in common sense language call manners, should be applied and should be followed at public meetings of any board of this municipality. Unfortunately and disappointingly, over the last 2 zoning board of appeal meetings and most recent planning board meeting, there have been incidents which can only be described as less than civil. I continue to be asked from various members of the community at large, what can we do to, quote, heal the community and improve the civility? And my answer has remained fairly constant. And the answer that I give to people is that we cannot heal any divisions in the community as long as individual members of the community refuse to participate in that healing. And in order to do that, we simply have to get back to what we would all teach our kids, which is you can disagree and speak your mind as forcefully as you feel you should for the circumstances. But as soon as we cross a line towards verbal abuse, verbal assault, we have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed until each of us as individuals chooses to no longer do that. So I'm saying this more as an exhortation, as a plea to the community and the members who come to some meetings, although not all, to simply say, let's keep our heads about us and understand that there are strong feelings on various issues, primarily those before the zoning board and the planning board, and not this board at this time. But that we need to do our parts as individuals to maintain the civility that we would expect from someone else if it was someone else disagreeing with us, instead of us disagreeing with a particular person or group. That also being said, it has come to my attention that over the last many months, a very small handful of individuals, and I do mean a small number, half a dozen or less, have taken their concern or anger over a particular process that is unfolding in the village and have chosen to issue threats, both veiled and less than veiled, against individuals and against potentially groups. I want to say in no uncertain terms that that type of behavior will absolutely not be tolerated. Small municipalities and small village mayors tend to shy away from using the full executive authorities of their office. I agree with that sentiment. I think heavy-handed mayors in small towns don't go well together, but I will make an exception when it comes to the physical safety and security of residents, members of the community, and certainly members of the village staff, village personnel. I will use every resource at my disposal, some of them quite vast, to push back against that kind of behavior to the fullest extent of the law, should it continue. And with that, I will climb off my soapbox and move on to acknowledgement of correspondence. We have an email from Ted Sheely of the County Health Department for, I don't know, I think Deb and I were here, I'm not sure. Yeah, I you were here. A few years ago, Ted proposed to the village that we consider something called a smoke-free, basically smoke-free Main Street, where the village would ban smoking of any kind in front of businesses and whatnot. We chose at the time, it was towards the end of the year then as well, we chose to wait till a state of the village meeting to kind of gauge what the community thought. And I guess proving that we don't always know what we can expect. I thought it might be fairly well received, but the folks who were in attendance said that they didn't think it was a good idea. And so we politely declined to continue to consider it. Ted has sent me an email asking if 3 years later, whether this board or this community may have shifted in their thoughts. And so I just told him I would bring it to the board. I didn't indicate one way or another. I think we can either tell him we don't think anything's changed until members of the community start showing up telling us they want something other than what we have. We could float it again at the next State of the Village meeting if we want. And that's kind of up to y'all.
You already got my answer.
Yeah, I mean, the state of the village, it's worth noting, was like resoundingly against this, which I think was shocking for everyone, but it was unanimous. Am I remember? I mean, it was like,
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
I was surprised. I mean, personally, I'm like strongly ambivalent. I don't know if that's a thing that you can be, but I really am like, I think if people are in favor of that, then I'm all for it. And if people aren't, then I'm happy to let it go. One thing I pulled up because this was on the agenda, and I think I've sent this around before, but I have statistics from the county about tobacco use, and it also includes, other drugs. But we are substantially higher than the county rate for youth tobacco use and youth vape use. Is that what they call it? I don't know what the term is. Smokeless tobacco use, which is not vaping. So that's totally different. But we're substantially higher. So for chewing tobacco, we're substantially higher than the county rate. Those numbers are, it looks like, going down. But just to throw that out there, we're substantially higher than the surrounding area. We had a sort of discussion in the youth commission about why that might be. No good answers were arrived at. I mean, obviously it was, but just to throw that out there.
So I was at the State of the Village meeting and was similarly kind of surprised at the reaction in the room. I don't feel like my recollection of that conversation kind of came with the youth perspective involved in it. And I was kind of intrigued by the letter. In the letter, his point of, it's not just to get rid of the nuisance of smoking, it's to kind of remove it from the public eye so that there's less interest in it from youth. So from that perspective, I'm intrigued by the question. That said, I do remember the State of the Village, and there was a lot of concern about the impact to local establishments, bars. People already can't smoke in them now. If they can't smoke anywhere, are they going to just not go out to the bar? So I think there's a lot to be weighed there without, I guess where I would come down is without having a kind of strong reversal of opinion from the village. I'm inclined to kind of stay where we are, realizing that that those numbers are also intriguing as well, realizing that we have a bit of a problem. It'd be nice to think about ways maybe without this. And I think Ted had mentioned potentially capping the number of retailers in the area or some other options that might be more palatable that would still kind of try to drive the problem. So something to consider thinking on that side.
So we had a chamber board meeting this morning. I brought this to them as business owners that would be impacted, and like the rest of the village, there was not a strong desire to change anything. Though we did brainstorm a little bit and had some ideas about potential ideas around timing of the law, like a daytime smoking ban versus nighttime when people are out at the bars, kind of thing. So kids walking through town maybe don't see it during the day, but once the sun sets, that ban is kind of lifted. The main thing we talked about that I come back to as well is, anytime you create a law, you have to enforce the law. who's enforcing this law? Is it the businesses? Are they going to be in charge of kicking people out from in front of their storefront? Are we going to expect our police department to look for anybody smoking on Main Street and deal with that? Is that a good use of their time? So the enforceability, I think, is tough issue for me to get behind. But I think I would at least be willing to talk to more businesses and see how they feel about the potential daylight versus nighttime kind of a law. Now, does that get? Then you also have to enforce that though, during the daytime, and how do you do that? But certainly the statistics aren't great. I don't think anybody really likes smoking, but we also have a kind of a unique Main Street where it's kind of hard to go behind buildings too. So unless you want to smoke in the creek, there's not a ton of options there. So I think it's a hard thing to move on right now, but collecting more opinion from the business owners and maybe more public opinion on daytime versus nighttime kind of rules. I'd be interested to have that conversation, but I'm not really ready to make any decisions right now.
Well, I will pass along those sentiments to Ted, and he's certainly persistent, so he'll continue to bring back the conversation.
And what's the official state law on distance from entrances?
I'd have to look at that one up.
I think I
It
found
puts you right in the middle of the street.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
It's
Yeah,
the same in New York. That puts you right in the middle of the street.
not ideal then.
Nobody enforces it because
Right.
they don't want people standing in the
Right.
middle of the street.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on Ted's email?
So I'm just going to share this just because I'm looking at it right now and I think it's interesting, but just so we all know. For alcohol use, T-Burg is substantially lower than the county. For cigarette use, we're somewhat higher than the county. Marijuana use, we're somewhat lower. Smokeless tobacco, we're way higher, like way higher. And pharmaceutical drugs.
That's not vaping?
No, chewing tobacco. Yeah, sorry, I misspoke initially. And then pharmaceutical use, we're much lower again. So it's only tobacco products where T-Burg is like, way, yeah. So just FYI.
Okay, next item of correspondence actually segues, that's the word of the evening, segues into old business. We have a petition signed by a number of village residents that was delivered to us about a week and a half ago, requesting that we please save the footbridge. And under old business, we continue to have some conversations, I should say some attempted conversations with some local contractors about getting additional quotes on what it might cost to repair the retaining wall that supports the Greg Street footbridge. One contractor in particular who does a lot of dock work in the Finger Lakes areas declined. It was more, the declination was more due to his workload than anything else. He said, I just, good problem to have, I suppose. I'm too busy. I can't take your job. But he did indicate that it was certainly something that his industry, kind of the dock repair industry, would be able to handle, but he just couldn't. I believe there are two others that we have some feelers out to and simply haven't heard back. So at least from my perspective, or from where I'm attempting to work the angle of how to save the footbridge, we're still in a wait and see holding pattern. That being said, and this is not an agenda item for tonight, but I do have it in mind that now that this sidewalk project has been completed on South Street, that we should begin looking for the next grant funding opportunity, wherever it might come from federal or state, because the next area that our 2007 walkability study identified as really needing sidewalks was West Main Street, essentially from the post office up to the mobile home park and Seneca Road. And my thought is that if we can find that kind of funding, if we can begin that process and walk down that road, which unfortunately takes time, that perhaps we could wrap the footbridge into that, because it is part of the walkability from that side of town down past the post office and then up.
So the completion, I'm sorry, up the Dorsey Hill to Cayuga Street is not the next piece?
Was not identified as a higher priority than West Main, simply because of the foot traffic in the road right now. So folks walking into the village coming down West Main, especially because of the two curves, makes it dangerous from a traffic perspective.
No.
I actually turn it up.
Okay, it's just me.
I've got a scarf on, so.
See, Ann said it's cold too. You're all nuts.
A lot of scarves in attendance tonight.
And I think that section's proximity, or because it's on 96, is what made it seem.
Yeah, because of obviously the traffic center.
So that's what I have on the footbridge. I don't know if anyone else has any comments or suggestions about a way to move that faster beyond waiting on contractor quotes and exploring funding opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it would be at least nice to know cost on either side of, you know.
Is there any kind of approximate, I mean, after we even found a quote that we liked, when does the state get involved? And how long does that take?
Well, the Safe Routes to School grant that paid for all of the most recently constructed sidewalks, I believe, was awarded in 2014. And construction didn't start until 2017. So it's 2 to 3 years from getting money to actually pouring concrete, unfortunately. I think we could do smaller projects in smaller sections, maybe faster, depending on where the funding is coming from. That one was a little bit unique because it was federal money being funneled through DOT. Maybe if there's, if we find an opportunity that's directly from Albany, maybe it would be quicker.
I would bet that the creek complicates it enough that it'll be slower, if anything.
Yeah, that was my follow-up. That is the DEC review. So ad count.
That very likely could slow down that piece. So. But my feeling, unless anyone else on the board objects, my feeling is that the footbridge is worth saving if we can. And the if is going to depend on timing, and well, like everything else, it's going to depend on time and money. Next item of old business is the village hall heating system and energy assessment. And
Yes.
This is very old business. Right?
This is, I'm dragging this one out as long as I can.
Circa 2011.
Better 7 years later.
So last month, we engaged Snug Planet to do an assessment of the building and give us a series of quotes for different options to move forward. We had also had a permissive referendum for the idea to put air source heat pumps in the front offices and then figure out what to do next. The numbers that came back from Snug lead me to believe we really are kind of back to the original two options, which is address the boiler and upgrade that, and probably do upgrades around distribution as well, so we have a better distribution of the heat, which is another problem we've had, or make the leap towards the air source heat pumps, considering that that brings not just heating but air conditioning to the building, and gets us off of fossil fuels. The quotes that we got for those two options are $19,000 give or take for the boiler and upgrades, as well as an energy management kind of thing that we benefit from. The heat pumps is around $38,000. They both have fairly substantial benefit after the fact, and savings after that, with the boiler paying back around 18 years from now and the heat pumps paying back around 28 years from now. I'm curious to hear from the board if there's thoughts on which direction we're leaning, noting that the big differentiator here is mostly the air conditioning, which is currently window units. And I don't know if we feel like that's sufficient, if you guys are comfortable in the summer or not, if that's an important thing to think about this situation, or And then obviously the kind of benefits that we've heard from the community in wanting to make a leap towards fossil fuel-free approaches.
Did that payback estimate include the efficiency on the air conditioning side?
I don't think it did. I think it was just looking at heat pumps, and so that's an open question. I mean, obviously, I think these are much more efficient than just wall unit or window units. And I know we've had some concerns about just having window units on the front porch that people can kind of kick in and wander around, and so on. So there definitely is some benefit on that end.
So I think I'm on board with heat pumps. I think it's fairly straightforward. I mean, it's a substantial cost, but I think it's justified. I mean, it's hard not to look across the street at all of the initiatives that they've taken as far as sustainability go. And I mean, library, school, I feel like we're somewhat behind on this front. And not that in and of itself is a reason to do anything at all, but I think it is an indicator that, it's time.
And I think it's an indicator of where our community's at,
Right.
the mentality of a lot of the residents here.
Yeah, agreed.
So what do we do about, okay, so if we go with the heat pumps or with the boiler at this point, whatever works, but it's not gonna matter where our heat comes from if we have gaps in our doors and gaps in our windows. And the building itself is so old and poorly insulated. And the original windows are still upstairs. So, my concern is how much of that cost are we really gonna save when it's going out all the cracks in it?
Yeah. Well, and so these are based off of the current situation we have, and they came through and they did the whole kind of building assessment. They did identify about $17,000 worth of improvements that they recommend, and I think that would behoove us to take that into consideration and start building a plan on how we might address that. But interestingly enough, the payback on that kind of stuff was even longer out than some of the other benefits, just because of how inefficient our current boiler actually is.
You don't have to convince me, sir.
Right.
So the one thing I would point out is, as far as your comfort being in the office, this would help substantially. I mean, already it will be sort of in zones. It will be, you won't feel the leaks anymore, right? People coming in this room will probably feel those leaks, but it won't be, not that we shouldn't fix them. I mean, obviously those inefficiencies are there and it's something to address, but it becomes a much less imminent, my God, I'm uncomfortable every day, all day situation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point. And a lot of what I'm seeing and I've understood through this process is that it's a lot to do with the distribution, more so even than the
Without
leaks.
question.
So,
I mean, I can turn the thermostat up and it doesn't get warm for 4.5 hours.
Right.
Because
yeah. So this will be a significant improvement from that.
I agree with the heat pumps. I think that we need to be moving into a more efficient methodology. One concern that I continue to have is how long are we planning on being in this building for the next 10 years? If you can say 10 years, just say 10 years. And then work from that. Do we have a baseline to plan from? Has there been any other thought or discussion about that?
There's been thought, but no discussion. The only way that I foresee the feasibility of moving out of this building, the only way that I foresee that happening is if there was some larger build for some reason for the municipality. If a new, just random idea, if a new fire and EMS facility was large enough to hold offices, then I could see it making some sense to start to combine, municipal office space. But short of that, I don't know where we would go.
I would add
It's
this.
a beautiful building,
and it's appropriate for the village, because we're right in the center. I'm not saying that we should move, I'm just saying,
Right.
are we looking at the bigger picture here, and should we be looking at that bigger picture?
We should, because this old house is not being maintained the way it needs to be, therefore.
I would agree with that.
I think that goes to your point. It's like if we've got a plan, then we can start working on it. Let's start addressing the fact that we're going to be here for a good chunk of time. You know, we can't obviously predict the future, but if we're going to be here, like you're thinking 10 years or so. You know,
It's like
worth-
at least half of the payback period.
Right, it's like worth putting some time and effort into, sure.
Well, there's $111,920, almost $112,000 in the village office building reserve fund. So there has been money saved for this building that hasn't been used. I remember a couple of years ago, we were going to spend 15 to 20 on the boiler, didn't. So here we are. Fortunately, that number hasn't tripled. So I think that, you know, if we want to put together a plan for this building, whether or not we're here 10 years from now, we should still have a plan in place for the building. Then it makes sense to start with staying warm in the winter and cool in the summer. And then, you know, we continue to put money into this reserve account every year. So, you know, the reserve accounts are there for such a time as this. And then if we take care of the heating issues this year, then we should look at what do we want to take care of next year? Is it windows? Is it substructure? Is it, you know, that kind of thing? Rather than just kind of leaving the money piling up and when something breaks that we fix. So that would be my consideration. You know, when you look at a number like 112 and you're deciding between 19 and 38, it's not a huge number to have to grapple with. You know, it's not $120,000 for a retaining wall kind of thing. So I think the most efficient, and the air conditioning side of it intrigues me. You know, the more efficient way to handle both pieces makes sense, and then we should, as a board, and either one of you want to tackle it individually, look at what's next. We don't have to. It's not like a fire truck where we have to save over 5 years to take care of that next expense. We can pick the next $30,000 to $40,000 building need, and maybe try to pick that off next year.
If the 38, it's 38, right, for the
Yeah.
heat pumps, and that's only for the front of the building.
No, this is for heat pumps for the front of the building, police, and this room.
Oh,
And then
Okay.
the second floor would be
addition.
some, well, it would be electric baseboard for the heat, and then we'd still use air window units, but they're much less used space up there.
Some of the heat from downstairs is going to, especially the front offices, is going to
Yeah.
find its way upstairs.
Ben, is this a complete list of what could be done to the building, or is there more that could be discovered?
I can't give a straight answer to that. My impression is, do you mean kind of as far as the window?
There's more.
As the insulation?
I guess I'm just
ceiling
wondering
stuff?
if, you know, if more, to Roden's point and what we've been discussing, if more gets done to make the building more efficient, that could potentially accelerate the buyback or the payback
Oh,
time.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
But start with windows.
Right.
Just windows, they're gonna be your payback, they'll be a great payback.
So if we have a 15-year plan for the building, it could get more efficient as it goes.
Yeah.
Conceivably. I'm not an expert, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
So generally what we do with the county buildings is you do the building envelope improvements before or at the same time that you're going to change or upgrade the heating, air conditioning, whatever. Because as folks said, you're gonna realize the energy savings much quicker from those systems. And then you're gonna be able to tell, because if you leave the building envelope like it is and you add these other systems, you might still have a lot of uncomfortableness and you're not really then sure if these systems are really working correctly. And you might, if you're having a contractor do all of that stuff together, then you might be able to get smaller systems.
Yeah, I think in our case, we're going to have to do them in close proximity. We're not going to be able to do them at the same time. We have the heat is actually semi-emergency. The boiler has failed a couple times in the last couple of years.
The last couple months.
Well, we'll know tomorrow.
Bad year for early winter.
Now we did permissive referendum on the spending last meeting, I thought.
We
Yeah.
we did for just the front office, though.
Right,
Right.
So it's up to
15,000.
15,000, yeah.
So now it's 38.
Will they
So-
do it, will they do it in 2 stages? So we don't have to wait.
I can.
So we don't have to wait 30 days to get heat in the front of the building?
I would bet if we pass it, they'll go. They'll just go ahead and start.
I think so. I asked them to price out. I asked them to price out just the front office, and they came in at 11.7. So if we want to, I can ask them if they can do it in two phases, and see what they
It's
say.
not changing the hardware they're purchasing.
Right, and I think they're all
They're all
completely
independent.
independent anyhow. So the only issue would be if there's just overhead kind of coming twice.
Well, I would emphasize to them, it's not the approval that needs to wait, it's them getting paid is just going to be in 2 phases.
Right.
So,
Well, I can pass that.
But this is
along.
about the planning.
yes,
It's not about getting paid.
yes.
So
I'm sure that's how they see it.
that's
too.
how they see it.
Yeah.
It's a good pitch.
Well, unless there's any further discussion, then I would entertain a motion to approve, subject to permissive referendum, the spending of up to an additional $25,000 to complete the installation of air source heat pumps and electric baseboard heat in the specified locations throughout the building, as quoted.
So it's moved. Do we
Second.
get a second?
Second. Ben should second.
Second. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Do we
Ben.
have to get a second bid?
We have,
Yeah, so speaking of that.
Yeah, so we have a second bid.
Oh,
Let me tell you how much that bid is. One
Yeah,
second.
can we
It's
talk
not
about
that
that?
It's more.
it's a lot.
This confuses me.
It confused me
I
too.
did read.
$145,000 for it and change, you know. It is not for, it is for a significantly larger installation, I think in much more of the second floor in different places. I worked with them to try and scope that back. They were able to bring it down to at least an approach for just the front office, which was $15,675. So an extra 5,000 or so more, 4,000 more than Snug.
in the neighborhood.
Yeah, but in the neighborhood. And I've been working with a third company and have had a very hard time getting any movement from them.
Well, I think given the fact that it's getting colder, I think 2 bids is,
They can do it in a week or less.
All right, so I'll follow up with
18.
Oh,
Oh my God.
still need to vote on that, I guess.
any additional discussion on the second round of funding for operation. Keep
No.
Tammy warm.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks, Ben,
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
for,
Thanks.
for driving that through, and thanks Tammy and Vicky for being somewhat patient.
Somewhat patient.
I thought that's where he was going, squeaky wheel.
I will tell you one thing, you need is a new front door then. I noticed today that it almost looked like it was open, there was a gap.
Baby steps, baby steps.
What do I tell you? It's historical.
That's right. All right, then, all in favor of issuing this permissive referendum for the $25,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, one step closer to warm. Old business, item C is,
Vehicle and traffic law, because I haven't been talking enough yet. So in the Dropbox is markups that I made to the vehicle and traffic law, covering a handful of different ideas. And then I talked to the chief and it all got changed. So I'll kind of just go through them for everyone's following along and we can talk a little bit more in depth. The top thing I noticed was there's a couple places in the law that call for a stop sign where in fact we have a yield sign out there today. One is on Truman Street coming into Wig by the school. The other is on Lake Street where Cemetery comes in. I initially thought, let's just kind of go the easy route. They seem to be working. Let's switch the law to match what the reality is. In talking with the chief, he would prefer that we switch the signs to match the law. So I'm inclined to leave those parts unchanged, and we can work through putting some stop signs up. The part that kind of kicked this all off was Lake Street, thinking about putting a stop sign on Lake Street across the bridge as you're coming from Maine into Dorsey Hill. In talking with Chief, they've, I guess Dusty has put a dividing line at that intersection to kind of keep people over as far right on that road as possible. So there's space for people coming down the hill to turn safely and kind of keep people turning up the hill, kind of do this dance and keep them separate. The Chief's impression is that a stop sign is fine. It's not going to hurt anything. He doesn't think it's really going to help anything either. I'm inclined to take a pause and see how that line works out, see if people in the area have kind of thoughts and opinions on that. And then that combined with trimming back the bushes again continuously, always you'd like it to go down to the ground if possible. I don't know what our kind of relationship with is the property owners there.
They've allowed us to do it.
As much as we're willing to kind of cut that back, really his concern is just visibility around that corner. You can have a stop sign there, but if you can't see around it, does it really do you any good? The last part was almost a whole separate thing, getting into just generally parking around in the village on front, heavy-handed with enforcement. So we kicked around a couple ideas of potentially, and I can work on some wording of like a small sign we could put around on existing poles, speed limit poles, any of the other kind of poles around to kind of pick a good couple of spots, maybe put forward by Chief of where he's seeing a particular issue crop up frequently and try and get the word out there through that. Maybe we can make a post on Facebook and kind of get the word out one way or another. That's going to start coming down the pike, and then have that be more of the driving factor around parking. There are, in part of this, I was looking at parking on South Street between Wig and Main, and then also on Wig Street. There's a couple no parking or no parking over the winter time signs. Our best guess is a lot of that comes from this kind of inability to get all the way off the street. But I think I'd rather see the law, see that side of it pushed, right? The real issue, because there are places where people could park that they would like to be able to park in the front lawn, that they can't just because of signage now versus a real actual issue. So at this point, without other edits to the law, I'm kind of inclined to hold off. But to keep that kind of parking thing kicking around in our heads, and maybe I'll draft up some language and see if we're interested in making a handful of signs we can kind of put around strategically to get people thinking about that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's worth continuing to look at the draft to see if there's anything that needs cleaning up.
Yeah. If other people have thoughts and ideas on anything else that struck them, certainly.
I agree with stop signs, and I very much liked the striping on Lake Street. I wish it was brighter or something, but I mean, it doesn't really solve, Rachel was here a couple months ago and was asking for a mirror so that when, you're walking that way, and the striping obviously doesn't solve the walking issue. But driving it, I don't know, Deb, you drive that too. To me, it seems like it makes sense if you're making that left. It's no longer scary if you just actually use the intersection. But
I've lived in my house for almost 40 years. It doesn't bother me at all. Sorry. I believe that there is enough room. If you pull up far enough, and if you aren't doing a pin turn, as many people say, but I drive a sedan. I don't drive an SUV. I'm not up higher. I can see around that. What I can't see is when people are speeding down the hill. Right. That's when I'll get started. But other than that.
Yeah, the chief did say brighter, bigger lines, bolder lines, something. So we can kind of iterate on that, maybe especially.
And that striping is probably subpar. There's a few issues with the paint machine and the size of the bit and a couple of other things.
Right. Well, it looks like it was sort of an experimental go round. I mean,
well,
but in concept, I like it.
I asked him how much he was drinking when he went.
Yeah. There's that too.
I understand we're going to pay the other part of the street. I actually asked if, since we are delaying the paving, if they could pave all the way up and make it so that when the stripe goes on, it doesn't look like we're chopping it up.
Yeah.
So then do we want to just table the actual draft law itself?
Yeah.
It's kind of,
Yep, and as we once we let things simmer, and if we've got some more edits to do, we can kind of bring it back up.
I would also suggest warnings, because I think parking on the street is like a couple people. I mean, it's sort of.
I think people get confused,
Right.
actually. I think the people from out of town come and think they shouldn't park on people's lawns, and they park on the
Right.
street.
Yeah.
Unless you live here, you don't know that you can't park on the street. It doesn't, I don't have no parking signs on Cuba Street. Why can't they park on the?
I mean, generally you don't park like in a road, but once it's started, then everyone's like, oh, this is where I park, and then it sort of escalates. But
I mean, I have people pull on my lawn, I don't care.
Yeah.
But
Well, I know one out of towner was during Porch Fest was ticketed on McClellan with all four tires on the road, just thinking, well, there's enough space to get by on the other side of the road, not thinking that he had just taken over half the road. He didn't see it that way. So
right.
I don't
And
know.
then
It's just
the
not.
same thing happens on Cuba Street a lot.
yeah, right. There's that.
So I think marketing would be important.
Right, so it might be useful. I was thinking Hugo Street was another good one to put a few signs around
Right.
and communicate that out.
That's a good idea.
okay, good. Next item of old business is online bill pay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
So I think, we talked last month about using maybe some existing options. I think Tammy and Vicky determined that that's not really feasible. So we did the demo with Municipay. I spoke again with the representative from Municipay and said, I know the one thing kind of holding me back was this desire to essentially let people have an account where you could almost go paperless with the billing. You get more alerted to go into your account and see what bills you owe. They don't have that functionality. It doesn't sound like our neighboring municipalities have that either. We're still, I don't know if it's an industry problem where we're still kind of stuck with sending paper bills and people typing in the bill number and paying it, but at least they would be able to do it electronically. Again, to reiterate, no setup fee to the village. It's a 2% fee to the user. And my dream would be to use this for anything that you would pay the village, whether it's mulch or taxes or water and sewer, recreation programs, youth programs, anything that you would previously have written a check for to the village, we would like to put into this.
Now,
No, go ahead.
does Municipay generate a report that comes to the front office so they know that, what bill numbers were paid under this particular batch of received money? Is that how that?
I believe that
And
is our
works.
understanding. I do have a call on the calendar with the representative again on Monday, anticipating hopefully something to come out of this. So
So you say that's a 2% to the consumer?
it's, let me verify that. There's no setup fee. The transaction fee to the consumer is 2.65% of the total transaction or a $3 minimum. The fee for online electronic checks is a flat $1.50.
$3 minimum is quite pricey.
So,
That's pretty standard credit card transaction fees in the 2 to 3% range.
Yeah.
so
No, but
if
the
I'm
minimum
paying
is.
electronically from CFCU, you're gonna charge me $1.50 to receive it? Well, I'm gonna pay you, I'm not gonna pay Municipay. Why would I do that? I'm not paying an extra $1.50 for every time I pay a bill. it doesn't cost me anything to use what I'm already using to pay you.
Well, I think that's important to remember is we're not taking any options, existing options away.
Right. So you still will get your huge batch from CFCU that you get today. And then we'll have others that will be able to do it online.
That we'll still have to enter.
That, yeah.
But there would be other things that people currently pay for that's they can't pay through the bank, right? Or does
Like,
everything come through?
the only thing that wouldn't come through the bank would be, I guess, the mulch orders. We couldn't do those because they have to, the payment goes with the work order.
This is certainly not meant to be nor designed to be a convenience to the office. It's a convenience to the resident.
Okay.
Plus, it opens up the ability to use credit cards for payments. You can pay from your bank account, but you're still paying from your bank account.
They did explain that some places have a bit of a kind of workaround to the account creation side that we were kind of interested in. That sounds like it might be a little bit more involved, and I'd hate to not move forward because we want to try to design that out. I think we can at least see how much usage this gets and then say, this is widely adopted. Maybe we can make it even more convenient in the future.
So the person that normally comes to your window and says, I want to pay with a credit card, still they can't pay with a credit card, they have to go home and use their computer. That's fine.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine,
So,
I'm just saying, that doesn't
If they
resolve.
can pay anything that they would pay the village for, taxes, water, sewer, water haulers, maybe, that's the only thing I can think that we would get. Is there a way to distinguish those payments through Municipay?
They'll set up different, like a drop-down box. The resident would pick what they were actually paying for.
That's what I saw on the video.
It's a nice option that we don't have. And it's not costing us anything, I think it's the way to do.
I don't know, Ben, if it requires another discussion with like youth programs, but to kind of link it to that.
I mean, I think it's absolutely logical. I mean, like you said, if there's the objective, and I think Gordon said this too, the objective should be any bill, anytime you want to give the village money, you can do it through this.
Right.
And certainly, I mean, I think recreation is where we need it the most, to be honest with you. I mean, that would be, you know, again, it's another area where I think generally that's accepted in the industry as a standard protocol, and we just haven't gotten there yet. So I think that'd be great. It will be a hurdle. It will certainly be, you know, it'll be a challenge, but you know, it needs to happen.
Well, we'll find out pretty quickly if people use it.
Right, that's true. Yeah, and if there's no interest,
There's an
then
adoption rate of 1 and it's on Week Street.
yeah.
I know that one
I
person.
know there's several parents that have in the past had to call, like, did you get my check? It hasn't been cashed yet. So if that could help people's personal accounting, I think that would go a long way.
I do believe there is a way that if they bring their credit card in, I think we talked about this, I talked with Stacy about us actually doing it for them.
No.
But
Yeah, I would prefer.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, but you guys asked if it was an option, if they came in, it is an option.
I would prefer to have them go online on their own and
Well, that's fine.
let any mistakes be the.
Option
You
I'm
do
would
not
saying,
want to handle this.
but it's an option.
So do you need anything from us tonight, or you're waiting on the next conversation with them?
I don't, would it require a motion to green light?
There's gonna have
The
to
setup?
There's gonna have to be something signed.
Yeah.
With them, so maybe if you can have all of that ready for December, we can look at a January rollout.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question, like strategically, you know, regarding tax year and stuff, would it be better to not try something new in the middle of that, or does it not matter?
I think January, if it all goes well and we have a January rollout, then the first real test will be February water bills. And then that'll give us time at our State of the Village meeting to mention it, discuss it, talk about how it's used. Give us a chance to sign up and make sure there isn't a sign up. It's just a portal.
Yeah.
So we can use it and see what we think.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Next item of old business is streetlights.
So we officially have two proposals on the table. And they are, as we've talked about, buy all of our streetlights, the ones that NYSEG owns, from them and convert them to LEDs, or continue to lease them from NYSEG and have them convert to LEDs. To buy back, total project cost estimate is about $111,000, which leads to a savings per year of $16,400, and it pays back in about 6 to 7 years. 20-year savings, $216,000. To lease and convert to LEDs, total project cost $20,146. Savings per year, $12,900. Project payback in 1.5 years. 20-year savings of $235,000.
What was that buyback savings number annually?
Annual savings per year of $16,400.
And was that option, was that buying and switching to LEDs, or is that purely?
Yeah, so that's, we take ownership and then we convert them to LEDs.
Okay, so that's both.
Now, what that does not take into account is if we own them, we maintain them. So that's something to consider. In addition to owning, we then have to take care of the maintenance. Some might argue that the turnaround time would be better, because I know waiting on NYSEG for some things has sometimes been problematic, but it's
So
all.
a car hits one of those poles that needs to be replaced, one of those street lights, and it needs to be replaced. Guarantee you NYSEG's turnaround's gonna be faster than ours.
Okay.
Right. Well, we wouldn't own the poles though, right? Because they still own the distribution system.
Well, if we take the lease, I mean, if we're buying them, I would think you own the thing, you own it.
I don't
just
think
own
so,
the
because we
light.
wouldn't own the whole distribution system for electricity, and the poles and all of that is, I don't
It's still a
think.
NYSEG pole. We just
Yeah, we
own the
wouldn't-
physical light.
And I think we still pay them something to like have the light mounted there. Was
That's what I
that?
was gonna say, so that we're gonna pay rent.
Something like that.
Cool.
I think there is something like that, but it's significantly less than obviously renting the whole light. I feel like I remember that in there, but I can't. 80% sure.
Yeah, I didn't really investigate the polls.
I can tell you, well, they've been doing the Main Street ones, and they're doing about 3 a week, so, the other ones, I still haven't heard back. Dusty was gonna check to make sure that the new bucket truck, which goes lower, reaches to that height. He thought it did, but he hadn't tested for sure. Guess I don't have a preference one way or the other.
Why would we do the buyback? What am I missing?
I don't see a real benefit to it, is my opinion.
Yeah, when we
Is it
initially started
something
looking into
about
this, I think the idea was to buy them back so that we could switch to LEDs. But if NYSEG will switch to LEDs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because
like-
that's a relatively new program
right.
that just came on board, which is
right.
we'll
the
change it
buyback-
for you. Yeah.
The buyback program was kind of the way you did this for a long while, and then they've just I think NYSEG was seeing that happen and catch on, and they said, let's get ahead of this and have a program where we'll do that for you. I mean, it did sound like maybe over a long enough term, you make a little bit more money by buying it back and doing it yourself, but it didn't. Yeah, that's not significantly different, right? And there's overhead and maintenance and headache with it. So
We start out as part of our trying to get our green certification. We wanted to
yeah,
do the lights.
yeah, we've got one more kind of box to check. That could come in one of two ways. One is with this buyback would definitely check it. The other is I'm going to go back and talk to Terry now that we've agreed on the air source heat pumps, and that may also check a different box, but we just need, whatever form it is, so it doesn't matter.
So the buyback would check the box, would the lease check the box?
Yeah, it's just converting the lights to LED, yeah, and they don't care which way.
So it is, I mean, I guess. It's less than $4,000, but it is 30%. So I guess you do get 30% more annual savings, the buyback route.
So I was, if we really want to look for, for the sake of conversation, pros to the buyback, greater control of lights. And we could be more specific with the kind of lights that we install in terms of color and wattage. So that kind of is the second part of this discussion. As I continue to have conversations with people about this, there's a lot of debate over what type of LED light do you buy. Some people have told me that doctors now think LED light is poisonous. It doesn't seem to be a roundly accepted opinion any more than your cell phone is killing you. But I know there's a lot of discussion about if we're changing the bulbs, can we make them more focused on the road and not making our houses glow, which seems like LED bulbs in general are better at that. But the color and wattage could play a role in that. So there is more, we could be very specific if we were to do the buyback. If we're going to lease, we have the option of 6 different wattages of light in 2 colors. So
How much mixing and matching and picking and choosing, and we don't like that, change it to the other one, do we get to do?
if we lease,
Or is it like a kitchen when the tile goes up?
it's just, this is saying that, and they say lease comes with no further maintenance worries, but if you suddenly want to change a light or take it down, you'll have to go through NICEAG.
So you're just waiting.
Yeah.
Functionally, it doesn't.
So I don't know if we want to,
Yeah, I mean, for my part, I think that I could foresee a situation where it could be harder to justify the front-loaded spend on the buyback. That's more of a convincing conversation of how much you're really going to make over the long term. Kind of thing.
What were the two, you would have like 20 or 30 year out numbers? What were those two numbers again?
20-year savings for buyback is 216,000. 20-year savings for lease is 235. So that might get your percentages back there, Warren.
Yeah.
Might break even there.
Yeah, I'm really leaning towards the lease at that point. But it's for them to keep the lease, we'll just change it over.
I don't know precise terms of what these leases come in, but I don't know if it's a situation where we're leasing and then we just decide, you know what, we're just going to buy them 5 years down the road. I mean, that messes with these numbers, but
is always an option, I think, if we wanted to. My impression of the lease is mostly we're paying for them to take out the old bulbs early and like eat that cost of what that they would still have X number of years of lifetime in it.
Yeah.
And who knows, technology may change in 5 years again. I mean, we've
Like-
seen it change every 5 years recently.
More likely than not at this point.
Yeah.
So if the general consensus is we like the lease option, do we want to ask for the documentation so we can see what we're actually getting ourselves into?
yeah, I can go back to NICEAG and say what's our next step? We think we've decided on a path.
I like the lease just because if the technology changes, NICEAG will be there and we don't have to do all of the experimenting.
It's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
Doing. One thing I would say is when I went to one meeting after Rachel had left and sort of before these guys came on board to talk about this, and one of the big takeaways for me was like the vast gulf between different colors of LEDs. So like
They're
like,
hugely
yeah.
different.
the very blue, like intense sterile. I just to make sure we're all sort of aware that those color choices are
There's pure
Sort of
white,
a big-
even the
Yeah.
whites, there's cool.
Right.
And if you get different, I have them in my house. And over my sink, I have 2 LEDs in here, one's yellow and one's white. And it's like, wow, I'm not changing them, I paid too much money for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in that side of the discussion because if we're going to do it, I want to get the light correct. Because I know we had an issue on Main Street a number of years ago where it was a runway strip, as I've been told. So wanted to just make sure that, you know, if we're going to go through the village and change all these bulbs, let's do everything we can to make them the
And it
way
sounds
they
like
should be.
Ithaca might have thoughts on ideas on like what's
Yeah,
best there. And
Terry's actually going to present at the next TCOG meeting, this whole thing. So in the time that it takes NICEAG to get us paperwork,
yeah,
maybe somehow savings increase if the whole county decides that every municipality wants to do a similar option and saves everyone even more money.
Yeah, I wonder if there's anyone that Terry might know that would be willing to like take a look at our lighting and see, is it too bright? Is it not bright enough? Like, you know, not a deep dive, but just kind of a walk around and give us a sense of, should we get the same wattage again? Or is it places, this is an opportunity to change that and adjust. It might be nice to get someone's opinion.
I asked Terry specifically about light colors and, you know, he kind of said there's studies in terms of how certain lights impact birds and insects. And so there's a lot of considerations.
The coloring, I mean, I'd like to see just kind of as yellow as possible, really. I think would be my personal take, but the wattage is the other part that I don't know. Like, I don't know, do you need it a certain level? Because otherwise, what's the point of a light? Or like, you know, that's where I'm less sure about. So
There's also self-dimming options, and I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know if they'll do any of that or all of that, or, you know, what's really on the table, but the range of options is pretty wide.
Well, the other side of the buyback that I should mention, if this isn't at all attractive, is I think the buyback does give the option to install some sort of smart controls for your lighting system. So if the mayor wants to control everyone's lights from his tablet.
can we get the LEDs that
Just
change
hypothetically.
colors? So you just can like, you know, get red, white, and blue down the street.
I don't know. But
Just for Winterfest.
anyway, if we wanted more administrative freedom there, that's something to consider with the buyback.
I can see the headlines now, Trumansburg blackout.
Asher got the tablet.
So then you'll get some lease information paperwork for us for December. All right, new business. We have a proposal from Ben Carter on the formation, the reformation, the formal reformation of a street tree committee.
So it's fairly straightforward. I don't think I have much to explain unless anyone has questions. I mean, it's basically just setting out a pretty bare bones mission. I mean, if you look around, I think it's fairly obvious that the trees in the village have been, we have two modes. One is ignore them, and the other is like, oh my God, it's way too late. We need to take this down, or it fell down, or something like that. So hopefully getting to a place where we can manage that more actively. And the biggest step in that direction is to come up with an inventory of the trees and to really see what the problem is. That's there's some cases where the DPW guys will do it, or they ask NICEAG to come, and NICEAG has been very gracious despite my grievances with NICEAG, but they've been very nice and have come and definitely helped out quite a lot in that regard. But I think this is an important proactive step to take. As far as the actual resolution goes,
Do we need a resolution to form a committee?
no, so we don't. So Royden could just sort of say this is a thing. The resolution is basically just to show, that we care, that we are doing this, that this is something that the board cares about and that it's a priority. And the reason that we want to do that, other than hopefully it's true, is just for grant funding. just to show that this is a sincere effort on our part.
Someone had come in and talked about, was that Don?
Don.
They came in and talked about
Right.
it, yeah. I got the sense that a resolution holds some amount of weight for grants.
Right, so for him, he's actually applying for a specific grant, which would do the inventory for us. So it would be a very professional, very in-depth inventory that I think would be amazing and would be great. So we're hoping to do that. One of the steps, or one of the sort of, with all of these grants, there's sort of check, like how many points can you get? And one of the points is if we can become a tree city. And so this is all sort of working in that direction.
Tree Village.
And the designation is still tree city.
I'm just saying, can you be a
Yeah.
village in
Yeah, yeah.
Tree City?
Yep. But yeah, so that's there. I don't know. Any questions about it? I think it's fairly.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's any objection, then I'll work with Ben on populating this committee.
That's great.
You all can get to work on
I have to
these
tell you, my
recommendations.
my whole fear with this is coming back to a homeowner and saying, you have to take that tree down.
Yeah. So that is a concern that I have from a very different angle,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is if that was the case, that homeowner would then go, who do I call to do that? And that puts me professionally in a very awkward position. So I would very much like to avoid that at all costs.
And me as a homeowner, when I know it's gonna cost $4,000 to take down a tree,
Right.
I have other places to spend $4,000.
Right. So that's very much, that's not the goal. The initial goal is just inventory. It's worth pointing out that like de facto, the way things are right now, theoretically, the village in some, permutation should be going around and saying these trees are dangerous. This is that. That's sort of status quo. So this doesn't actually change that. But I think the idea is that if we have an inventory, these things allow us to pursue grant funding and allow us to sort of solve the issue in a bigger way rather than just this tree's scary, you have to do it. But I appreciate that concern because that was also my concern. I very much want to avoid that circumstance.
I have no interest at all in telling a private property owner what to do with a tree. On the risk management side, there's actually a risk if the village were to try to take that on and you miss a tree that should come down, and then it falls on the house. Now the village is liable. So I'm only interested in this committee making these recommendations and doing this inventory for those trees which are in the village right of way, which would become our problem if they do come down.
Every tree on my property could be in the right of
That's
way.
because you live on Cuba Street and everything in Cuba Street is
Yeah, I know.
That is
backwards.
that is a separate conversation.
Yes.
It is worth pointing out though that there are obvious examples. There are like broken limbs hanging over the street.
Yeah.
Like when I look around the village, I generally cringe like every 500 feet. It's definitely worth pursuing.
Yeah, mine are not there. They have been trimmed since I've lived there.
Yeah.
And it was a very heartfelt $3,000.
Yeah.
So, and that was years ago.
So do
don't
we
wanna
need a motion to move this resolution or how do we?
So I would just move that we establish as a board the street tree advisory committee. And that's really it.
So then I would entertain a motion to
We need to agree to stop.
establish the ad hoc committee, which will be known as the Village of Trumansburg Street Tree Advisory Committee, with members to be appointed by the mayor.
And I would like the resolution, if we're all on board, to be part of the record so that that's,
Of course.
You want to move that?
yeah, so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thanks for the cookies.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Is that discussion on the motion?
That was,
It's a discussion of cookies.
Really have a hard time keeping keeping the motion thing going. Just saying.
All right, item number 10 is approval of abstracts, of which we have several. The first being the general fund abstract in the amount of $246,469.39.
I move that we approve that abstract.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We did.
Yeah.
Read the page.
Yeah, okay, I don't know. The goats. I'm going to the goats, I don't know.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Next abstract is the EMS billing abstract in the amount of $7,263.30.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Next, we have the water fund abstract in the amount of $40,167.61.
I move that we pay $40,167.61 for the water.
Second.
Was that you, Ben?
Yep.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. We have sewer fund abstract in the amount of $26,890.36.
I move that we pay the sewer abstract of $26,890.36.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Capital project, Safe Routes to School. This should be our last.
It is.
This is our last payment on that project in the amount of $66,184 even.
I move that we pay this abstract in the amount of $66,184 from the capital project Safe Routes to Schools.
Second.
So since we're paying them,
Mhm.
is there any reason not to sign the contract with Fisher? Now that I mean, if we've already,
I just want clarification on what that's for, if it's part of the closeout or
Oh,
if
if it's different. Oh, I gotcha.
possibly redundantly sent to us by mistake.
yeah, okay.
Any other discussion? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. We have capital improvement water well project. Final invoice for electrical contractor in the amount of $32,139.97.
I move that we pay for capital improvement for water well project, $32,139.97.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Last but not least is trust and agency in the amount of $29,548.06.
Move that we approve that abstract.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 11 is our second public comment period. Let's see if we need 15 minutes. If anyone has anything, yes, Ann.
One thing I forgot to mention as far as this, with the budget, I don't know why, I think I missed last month's meeting, so I didn't get a chance to tell you, one thing we improved is some money for park improvements for local municipalities. I don't know if you heard about that. So that's, we don't have the application process set up, that'll be sometime in 2019. So I think $10,000. So if you own, do you guys own the farmer's market or some other? So it'll be, what we're kind of looking for is something visible improvement. So, not just regular maintenance, but maybe if you're gonna improve some structure or add structure or renovate one of the structures that's there, something like that. Or add something kind of visible, something substantial.
Okay.
So really get a.
Good.
And also for, if you guys wanted to hire somebody or in some way address affordable housing. So if you needed a consultant, an engineer, or something, there's up to $10,000 for each municipality for that. And I'll let you know when that comes through, as far as the application process.
Okay.
When you say for each municipality, it's already earmarked for each?
It's not earmarked, it's, so there's gonna be set amounts in each pot. So for instance, if other towns or villages apply for it, the money could be going up at some point throughout the year. But you can, each municipality can get up to a certain amount.
I got it. Okay.
So it's to make sure that one municipality doesn't ask for $50,000.
I got you.
And apply. So we're trying to do more, which we've been hearing about, people are wanting more services from the county to come back down to the different municipalities, so it's part of our effort to do that. Or you could, for grants, like, so you could use it for, look into grants for different things.
Good. Yes.
Caitlin Matthewson, couple of things that I just wanted to clarify. Ben, when you were talking about the heating system, the air source heat pumps, and you said that that system would have a payback period of about 28 years.
Mhm.
So I'm no expert at this at all, but we have like a quote on that in our home as well, and they have told me that those systems only typically actually last between like 15 and 20 years. So I'm just wondering if that came into the conversation with that payback period.
Yeah, so that was brought up a little bit, but I didn't dig super deep into that. It wasn't really pulled out exactly into their quote about that. So I'll definitely follow up with them to see more about that. So
My understanding when we talked about it earlier was that it's pretty close. So it may pay itself off before it dies and we have to replace it, or it may not. It's kind of wishy-washy, but the premise and the real foundation of that decision isn't really about the financial aspects.
I just thought it was worth noting, because I mean, I would love to do that at my house, but financially I was like,
Yeah. Well, and I think that was part, I think in general, when I was looking at this and thinking about this over the past couple of weeks and month, is that it does become, like I think Ben was saying, it's a little bit of taking a principled stance against what that means, as well as the improvement in cooling and heating. And so it's not just a pure kind of dollars and cents for sure, which was unfortunate. I wish it had been a stronger, just like no duh. And I think what I found in learning about all this stuff is that just the ridiculously low price of natural gas right now makes a lot of these things much more difficult. So interesting things for everyone to learn, for sure.
I would also like to point out that boilers break in 15 years too.
Yeah, they've gotten more technically advanced in their computers now, and they break as
I
well.
already have a mind with that.
Yeah, so.
so my other, just kind of voicing my support of online bill pay, all for it. Would love to see that happen. Tammy would have to see me a lot less frequently.
But I like to see it.
And then also of the issue going forward of the Greg Street footbridge, whoever put that petition together did not reach too deep, because they never came to my house and I live like 1 block from there. So would really love to see that pursued, and I know that there's a number of us who are willing to pitch in and help in whatever way is useful to the village. I mean, I understand there's a lot of stuff regarding the water and how that has to be handled really carefully, but whatever way we can help advocate and do whatever, happy to.
Thank you. Yes, Jen.
Hannah James, sorry, thank you for addressing the foreign issue. And since I'm the only one here that attends all three of those meetings, I would
3
like
nights in
to-
a row this week.
Yes, indeed. You don't have television. Anyway,
This is
um,
way better.
I would like to suggest that either a prepared statement be read by the chair, or you come to the meetings and make that same statement before the meeting starts, so that the tone is set from the very beginning, that this needs to be respectful. And interchange. I mean, you telling me that, I'm never gonna be rowdy, but I can only speak for myself. And I agree, and I talked to you about this twice, that the court needs to be addressed. Because it's kind of outdated, I think, and it's unfortunate. So that's what would be my suggestion. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be there, but have a prepared statement that each of the chairs could read before the meeting begins.
Okay.
And then, the second thing is, how much longer are they gonna pick up the leaves?
As long as there's not snow on them until Thanksgiving.
Well, in my block, I don't know if you've seen it, but we probably got a 3-foot pile all the way down on the one side.
Cayuga Street has the same problem.
They passed down on the west side of South Street twice. I had put out 17 bags and picked up for over 2 weeks. And the leaves I put out before Halloween, and they're still not, and we're supposed to get 68 inches of snow tonight. So it's a problem.
It is a problem, and it is a problem that there's been a problem with the machine.
Okay, it was one that, because I saw it sitting over there.
Yeah, and as you know, we went through one storm and lost almost all our leaves.
Yes.
Was it, and it was late, it was like only a week, maybe week and a half ago that that happened. I don't even have mine raked. It was just,
Well, everybody in my neighborhood does.
yeah, and so does Cayuga Street. So does Cayuga Street, and they tried, I talked to Dusty last Friday, and they said it had taken them 3 days to just get around the village once, and that it broke again, and they're doing the best they can.
Are we thinking about doing the week after Thanksgiving as well?
I heard through Thanksgiving that may have been extended because they haven't been able to get them all up.
Yeah.
But
Well,
as they get
wet and
wet,
heavy, too.
the wetter they
Well,
get, the
that's
harder
also-
it is on the
I
machine,
think that's the
and the
part of the
slower
problem
it is.
they're having with the truck is everything is so saturated.
Well, what if they can't get it?
I don't have an
You can
answer for
always-
that, Jen.
You can always bag them and they pick them up on Mondays, weather permitting and projects permitting, priority permitting. But we do that every year long.
Yeah, I know that, but bagging is pretty.
Oh, I
Yeah, we
get
know.
it.
Wet ways.
Yeah, I chop mine up with a lawnmower.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Any other public comment? We have time.
I would suggest that you would go to the planning board meeting. Just to have, even if you didn't stay, but just to say, the way that you are very calm or a video message or something.
Yeah. There are potential legal issues with the mayor showing up at a planning board meeting.
But there could be a prepared statement.
Prepared statement is an option.
You don't even have to say it's from you. I won't tell.
You can go,
Well,
But
it's
deputy
on this
mayor.
I can
recording,
ghost
you
write it.
just take this recording and play it before.
Please turn your
Yes,
back
it's already out of the place. It's live streaming this?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's already being circulated.
Not always the highest viewed live stream though.
Though I did tell some coworkers that this would be,
resident.
it might be, could be a couple people from Portland viewing.
We still need to confirm that the new audio setup was even functioning, so could be a very quiet live stream if the microphones weren't working
The
properly.
company he works for really exists. I
Yeah.
have questions. Any other public comment? All right, if not, then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss EMS personnel and collective bargaining subject to the Taylor Law.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice, you're the best.
Always in one direction.